Budapest, pearl of the Danube, capital of Hungary and an ever-changing metropolis. This sleepy city is now a modern and tolerant metropolis. Hungary was once a kingdom, but then came the Turks, who were followed by the Habsburgs, and Maria Theresia, who became Queen of Hungary. Numerous revolts were put down, but in 1867 the Austro-Hungarian monarchy was born, with the marriage of Franz Josef and Elizabeth. The historic centre of Budapest is dominated by its noble castle that towers above the banks of the Danube. A 100-metre-long cable railway that dates back to 1870 is both a practical and fascinating way to ascend the hill to the castle. Each day, the area around the castle, the Fischerbastei, that has never played a military role, attracts large numbers of tourists. It has become one of the city's main attractions. It seems that Andras Hadik continues to protect the imperial family. Most of the Gothic Matthias Cathedral dates back to the 19th century. Of the original 16th century buildings, only their foundations remain. Following its completion in the 14th century, Matthias Cathedral was the setting for several coronations. Colourful and impressive glass windows illuminate its interior. The Turkish conquerors were well impressed by this church and transformed it into a mosque that they used for almost 150 years. The entrance to the kilometre-long labyrinth of mysterious corridors within Budaya Mountain appears as unimposing as a cellar door. Subterranean springs and watercourses created caves and corridors, and the Turks connected this system of corridors to the cellars of numerous houses. The beautiful facades, picturesque archways and idyllic courtyards of this area of the city created the most elegant street of the Middle Ages, Uriurka Street. The castle is the city's most dominant building. It has often been destroyed, rebuilt and improved, resulting in its present-day neo-Baroque design. An imperial fortress for the protection of this harbour on the Danube, built in the style of the Hofburg in Vienna, but far more imposing. Today, 400 years of Austro-Hungarian history are omnipresent, and since the destruction of the Berlin Wall, the people of Budapest have openly celebrated their historic past. The nostalgic tram journey along the banks of the Danube is in stark contrast to the increasing development of this commercial metropolis. The Danube physically divides the city and was thus integrated into its overall design. Today, 6 bridges span the famous river. The Elizabeth Bridge was destroyed during the Second World War and rebuilt on its surviving bridge piers. Until 1926, it was the longest river bridge in the world. The Ketten Bridge was a massive and mighty structure. Construction began in 1842, following a fact-finding visit to London by Istvan Sechenyi. The engineer, William Tierney Clark, introduced him to a new method of bridge building, thus the creation of this 308-metre-long bridge. It is guarded by stone lions. Its heavy iron chains are secured by huge screws. They span between the supports that are replicas of classical triumphal arches. The extraordinary adventure of travelling by boat on the Danube through historic city districts can only be experienced in Budapest. The riverbanks become increasingly greener, and occasionally there's a glimpse of a splendid villa, until it's obvious that we have arrived at the edge of the city. An island set amid the Danube is the entertainment area of Budapest, Margarethen Island, 2.5 kilometers long and 500 meters wide. Over millions of years, the river deposited pebbles and sand in a bend of the river and so created this island. Today, it is a green oasis for the huge city, with parks and fountains. Pathways lead across green meadows and small forests where silence and relaxation is guaranteed. The water-loving Romans built their first spas on this island. It later became a royal hunting ground and was off-limits to the public at large. But the most colourful time on Margarethen Island was during the Romantic period of the 18th and 19th centuries. Then it was a meeting place for poets, philosophers and artists. A small hotel was built for this creative community, and it became an island of artists and dreamers. At the end of the 19th century, the island was sold to a private concern that built a watering place here and demanded high entrance fees. Non-paying citizens were excluded. The ruins of the Dominican monastery are a reminder of the name of the island's patron, Nun Margareta, daughter of King Bela IV. It was only after the First World War that the island became open to the public. At first, there was a small entrance fee, but that was later discarded. This well-laid-out park contains various flower beds that shine out in an array of splendid blossom, a masterpiece of garden architecture. The local people appreciate this island on the Danube and enjoy the evenings when its fountains send jets of colourful water high into the sky. A boat returns us to the centre of the city, a charming intersection of both east and west. In the area of the city called Pest, there is a splendid building with a mighty cupola. The Parliament is the city's major landmark and an important part of Hungary's historic past. In 1867, Buda and Pest were acknowledged by the Emperor as the seat of the Hungarian government with its own parliament. "13 years later, in 1880, the construction of a new and more magnificent Parliament building was duly approved. The building is reminiscent of London's Houses of Parliament, in which both democracy and the monarchy have proved to be so successful. "8 years in construction, the dimensions of this palace-like building exceeded its English counterpart. It is 268 metres long and 118 metres wide. In front of the Parliament, there is a work of art that recalls Hungary's history. At the beginning of the 18th century, Rákóczi achieved a large degree of success with his army of farmers. The sovereign of Siebenbürgen and Hungary was the leader of the revolution against the Habsburgs in Vienna. But in spite of the help of Ludwig XIV, the struggle eventually came to nothing. Revolutionaries repeatedly created public unrest, but the rebellions were suppressed. Thus, for many years, the Hungarians were excluded from political life. Architect Imre Steindl created a richly adorned neo-Gothic facade that was designed to express the optimism of the newly established kingdom. In 1918, the Hungarian Republic was established, and in the Second World War joined forces with Germany against the USSR. The Red Army later occupied Hungary. Communism came to an end with the opening of Hungary's border with Austria in 1989 and its subsequent peaceful transformation into a democracy. Today, Budapest and Hungary are members of the European Union, a further great milestone in the history of this passionate yet melancholy people. Hungary is a fusion of two different cultural regions, as indicated by its architecture and lifestyle. Here, the order of the Occident unites with the calmness of the Orient. These fine houses, whose inner courtyards are enclosed by glass roofs, contain numerous architectural gems. They date back to the time when Budapest was in competition with Vienna. Examples of buildings that date back to Budapest's founding years adorn the city centre and indicate the former wealth of its citizens. Vörösmarty is located in the centre of the city, named after the national poet Gehele Vörösmarty, for whom there is also a monument. Above it, the pulsating heart of Budapest is alive with cafes and shops, and below is the oldest underground electric railway in Europe. In 1858, the confectioner Henrik Kugler opened a cafe in the middle of the city. 26 years later, he sold it to Swiss immigrant Emil Jabot. Here, the finest confectionery was offered for sale in a luxurious setting, yet at a reasonable price. Thus, the Jabot soon became popular for those with a sweet tooth. The lavish furnishings have been preserved to the present, and any visit is a nostalgic adventure, even though today's prices don't reflect those favoured by its founder. The Hungarian Opera House was designed after its counterpart in Vienna, in the style of Neo-Renaissance and Neo-Baroque, with arcades and statues. At the entrance, there is a sculpture of the great Hungarian composer Franz Liszt. And another of Ferenc Erkel, who officially opened the Opera House. Master Miklos Ibel had created an architectural masterpiece, with a painted dome and a large hall that could seat an audience of 1,289. St. Stephen's Church stands tall and majestic, extending high above the rooftops of Budapest, capital of Hungary. The people of Budapest simply call this church the Basilica. Construction of the Basilica began in 1851, but following several alterations and setbacks, it was eventually completed in 1905. Due to its long gestation period, the Basilica consists of three different architectural styles: classical, neo-Renaissance, and Baroque. During its construction, the church encountered many disasters. In 1868, its entire dome collapsed. The grandiose interior of St. Stephen's Church is decorated with several gold plates and a collection of highly decorative wall paintings. The country's largest cathedral is dedicated to Hungary's first Christian king and national hero. It can seat a congregation of up to 8,500. The embalmed hand of King Stephen I is one of its most precious relics. It is located in the chapel of the Holy Right Hand. Its grand interior and impressive church organ are frequently used for classical and religious concerts. On the ceilings, wonderful paintings shine out in bright gold. Several tons of granite support the weight of the magnificent glimmering dome of the fascinating basilica. Budapest has many different faces. The Paris of the East, a lively city that has retained its historical inheritance. The world-famous Café New York became the center of its cultural life. Franz Molnar threw its door key into the Danube and said, "This cafe will never close." The city's social elite reserved their tables here. They sat and chat while watching those below enjoying a good meal. Authors, journalists, artists, actors and musicians used the cafe's address as though it were their own. Here they were at ease and surrounded by their contemporaries. The cafe's interior features an abundance of neo-Baroque turn-of-the-century design. Fin de siècle within the cafe, and today popular with tourists. The exterior of this building is somewhat deceptive, but inside there's a huge thermal bathing complex. The Tsechenye bath was inaugurated in 1881. Its baths and open-air pools are open to the public throughout the year. Each minute, up to 400 litres of hot water rise up from a depth of 1,200 metres. Vajdanyari Castle was built in 1896 when Hungary celebrated its first millennium, a complex that contains all of Hungary's architecture in just one building. This incredible structure contains the counterparts of no less than 21 famous Hungarian buildings, and today the city lives again with its great history. An old metropolis with a turbulent past whose pride has reawakened once again. Budapest, a metropolis in the center of the new Europe.